Morning. So we're going to have a short presentation of a report. GFD has been running the career fairs for some years now. And part of what we do is to trace back and find out from participants who have benefited from this process to get their experience as to how the career fair has impacted on their employment outcomes, particularly their confidence to step out into the world of work. And so the report you're about to hear or see is just a brief highlights of some of the key issues that have come out. And these are more or less the lived experiences of our participants. The bigger report is there, which we will soon share with all partners so that you get to appreciate in whole what Career Fair is doing in impacting the employment outcomes of persons with disabilities. I have been introduced. My name is Moses Fordjour. I work with the Ghana Federation of Disability Organizations in charge of monitoring and evaluation. Can I get a navigation? Okay, good. All right, so just to give a bit of a background, the annual career fairs have been organized as part of our drive to improve employment outcomes. It started by looking at graduates with disabilities who are preparing to enter into the job market. With time, of course, based on the discussions that we've been having with participants and stakeholders, there's been a call for this scope to be expanded to not only look at wage employment, but also people who want to venture into entrepreneurship. And we'll say that over the years, that is where we are drifting towards. Our key partners have been the Danish disability organizations, Disabled People's Organization of Denmark, Sight Savers, Standard Chartered, we are so grateful, British Council, FCDO, and many, many other partners. The next slide, please. So in this year's career fair, we just thought to give you some rundown or some of the numbers. And I must say that this study picked some data from a sample that we have. And so you may not have all the years represented here. So we're looking at 2017, 2018 to 2022. So on average, we're having about around 100, between 90 to 100 participants coming on board. It's also striking that the male-female participation is not so wide, but consistently we see that the males are dominating. So that is it. So in terms of the focus of the career fairs, it is about getting people prepared. How do you do basic things to make your CV a marketable one? How do you develop your soft skills? When you appear, you get opportunity to appear for interview, how do you carry yourself? Such confidences is the reason why the career fair was birthed. And so over the years, the process has looked at how do we build people's confidence so that they can, confidently enter the job market. The next slide, please. So by way of the study, we looked at answering some 4 key questions. What has been the experiences of the alumni regarding their confidence in employment? What has been any significant changes they have seen in their lives as a result of being participants? Were there moments of disappointments? Obviously, people come with expectations. Were there some moments of disappointments? And because we are looking at this being a sustainable process, what recommendations? So as I said, these are recommendations that are coming from our past alumni who have participated in our career fairs. The next slide, please. Okay. All right. So I will skip the methodology. Basically, this was a qualitative study. So, of course, I need to also emphasize that the limitations of this is that the number of respondents we did sample a few. We did not interview everybody. We took a sample, and that not many employers also participated in this study, even though the study design was to reach out to employers who have employed to see what is their story. How did they also overcome their barriers in order to employ persons with disabilities? Just a few participated. And so employers, you're here. In future studies, we shall be reaching out to you. Please do help us to get your side. Just by way of summary, the findings. Regarding transitioning from school to the world of work, most of the people we have interviewed have indicated that they were struggling to find employment opportunities despite holding relevant qualifications. And majority of them indicated that they have personally faced multiple rejections from employers. So not once. So I used to say 2 or 3 occasions. They know that they have done their best, but they've been rejected. And they attribute this to negative societal attitudes, the lack of confidence on the part of employers, and the influences of negative stereotypes about the capabilities of persons with disabilities. 1 in 7 of those who we interviewed reported success in securing employment, and they attribute this to the skills they acquired when they attended career fairs. And that is quite, even though it's a moderate number, that is quite assuring that we will get somewhere. Moments of disappointments, yes. Some companies and institutions were not adequately prepared to understand disability inclusion, particularly regarding accommodation of persons with disabilities in their work spaces. The career fair was condensed into a single day, and this was a moment where they expressed that feeling to say that based on what they wanted to say and the opportunities they had wished to have interaction, quality interaction with employers, they felt that one day was not enough. And so in future, we could do that. And thanks to the CEO for Standard Chartered, who outlined that now we are doing 2 days. So there will be a boot camp. People will come, will have quality interaction with the technical people. The next day, we'll have this big gathering, which also comes with bigger opportunities. The absence of follow-ups and instant feedback. So what here they are saying is that they want, when they come to career fairs like this, should be able to give me feedback and say, how did I perform in my interview? How did I perform in the way I carried myself when I approached you as an employer? They want that instant feedback so that they know that they have picked something positive from this. This, they realize that it was not there, and so it's a suggestion for future interactions. Absence of employers from the regions outside of Greater Accra. So we invited people from outside of Accra, and they are looking to say, okay, if I'm coming from Koforidua, is there an employer who is coming from Eastern region? Because right from the career fair, I'm going back to my region. So the absence of that, they felt that was also something that was quite disappointing. Some participants expressed difficulty in engaging with employers due to the limited time allocated for the interactions. And some employers were not willing to provide their contact information. So some would have wished that at least you give your complimentary card to say, okay, you are free to contact me. But because they didn't get that, that was a moment of disappointment. All right, so significant impacts. The fair served as a moral booster. And this is just summarizing what the statements people make. It motivated participants to restart their job search. So this group of participants were saying that we almost gave up until we had opportunity to appear, and based on the presentations, it gave us some assurance that we can restart our job search activities. Participants said they gained valuable insights into practical things that they need to take note of: job interview skills, how to write a good CV, and the essential skills that employers are looking out for. It was also a moment of opportunity for them to network. So some picked friends from among their colleagues. Some also were able to network with the resource persons who came around. For some, the experience they gained at the fair directly led to employment opportunities. Some were given offers to go and do internship, which led to employment. And among some of the names that came up, please don't get offended if you are an employer, but your name doesn't feature here. But this is the common thread that went through. So some people were picked as alumni to teach in organizations that they came from. So we have organizations that lead for Ghana, Local Government Service, Japan Motors Trading Company, Africates Medical Center, and Amalitech. So if you are here, this is a proud moment for you. People have given positive statements about what you're doing. And these are the range of employment areas that they have been put into. Some are going into as teachers, some are social development officers, finance officer, support staff, and recruitment analysts for diversity and inclusion. And we've seen that the diversity of the roles that are being given is showing very positive thing. All right, so the likelihood that anyone will recommend that, okay, people should participate in career fair, that is quite positive. As high as 66.7% said yes, because it is relevant. I will recommend that anybody should make an effort when the call comes to participate in this. Some recommendations were made. There's the need to include employers from various sectors beyond banking and ensure they are briefed on disability issues to foster acceptance and inclusivity. GFD and partners should extend the duration of the fair to 2 to 3 days, which I did alluded to. GFD and its partners should ensure organizers commit to securing jobs for participants and provide follow-up support to track their progress after the career fairs. GFD and its partners should introduce career fairs in schools to provide early exposure to the world of work, helping students with disabilities better prepare for the future of employment. There's the need to prepare some companies and institutions to adequately understand disability inclusion. Last but not the least, that there should be representation from government and public institutions, including the local government service, because they thought that these are institutions that are big employers. So they are looking at that. So briefly summarizing, this is the presentation. I would like to thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and very insightful presentation. I'm sure as partners would look at these recommendations, and in planning our next fair would incorporate some of these into it. We want to move on to the next session, which is a panel discussion. The panel discussion is basically to discuss best practices on disability employment. And we have our panelists in the house. I would first want to invite our landlord, Nido Dudodu, the British Council Country Director for Ghana, Cameroon, and Sierra Leone, to join us. We also have Alimata Abdul, who is a Disability and Inclusion Coordinator in the UN Ghana Residence Coordinator's Office. Can we please give her a round of applause? And then finally, we have Mr. Richard Ofei, the founder of the Ghana Disability Dream Development Foundation, GFFFD, who would also join us. Thank you very much for joining us. You have your mics by your side. If you could please check for me that it's working. Yes. So in my introduction, I spoke about how persons with disability have various talents and skills, but have not been able to bring it to bear in the sense that they have not been employed enough, so they are not able to showcase their talent. And in the address by Mr. Homaji, he spoke about the unemployment percentage in general, and how it's even more when it comes to persons with disability. So we have Nidodu here as an employer, we have Alimata here as an employee, and then we have Richard here as an entrepreneur. So we would want to hear three different perspectives around this. So I would start with Ni, our landlord. So Ni, how can companies revise their recruitment and hiring practices to attract and retain a diverse talent pool that includes individuals with disability? What innovative approaches have been successful in this regard?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. And I would say that, for me, it's three things. It has to do with being intentional, being consistent, and also being embedded in the things that an organization does. And why do I say this? Employers, and for that matter, companies themselves are trying to, especially in this day and age, trying to survive in a very tough macro environment. However, there's no way we can leave anyone behind. And that's why, and using the examples from British Council, organizations need to be very intentional about it, because if you are not intentional, it's very easy for you to forget and just, look at your bottom line. Some of the things you could do is to encourage persons with disability when you put out adverts to apply. Go out of your way, have relationships with organizations like GFD, and if there are opportunities that you really want persons with disability to participate, send it through that network and let them get access to also put in their applications. So for me, and just coming back to that point, it's about being intentional and looking out for every segment of society when you have economic opportunities through job adverts.
Thank you very much, Ni. I would move on to Alimata. And I would ask, Alimata, how did you get your job? Any resistance prior to applying for the role? Tell us about your experience working with the UN.
Okay, sorry for that. Hello, good morning, everybody. And thank you so much for the question. Actually, how did I apply for my role? I got into the UN system through the United Nations Volunteer Program. And actually, it was a colleague of mine who sent me the job ad. I had done consultancy with her in an organization. I never knew her. And then she saw I had sent her something from Eastern Europe that she consulted for. So when she saw this, she thought, she sent it my way. So I went into the system. Initially, I didn't want to apply, but because I had a consultancy doing so, but I said, let me just check on this. And I saw a few things that aroused my interest. So I went into the system to apply. The UN system, you have to apply using their system. So actually already I was on a UNICEF thing. I was applying for a UNICEF program and things like that. So when I went into the system and I put my email address, the system said, oh, there is an account already existing with this account. I was really surprised. So I had forgotten my password, so I said, what? So I double checked and they sent me reset. And it was really my account. So I went inside and fortunately I was able, actually the only downside is that the United Nations, the volunteer program platform is not very accessible using screen readers, which I have told them. So I did apply. I used the system to apply, and then I was selected. And also when I was selected, the interview was through Teams. When I saw that, I was like, I was very conversant with Zoom. Why are these people using Teams? Because in 2018 and 2019, the consultancies I did was using Zoom. So I was quite very conversant, but I double checked with Zoom, Teams, and Teams was also accessible. So yeah, so I did the interview, and it was competency-based interviews. Fortunately, all the sites that were recommended for the UN competency-based interviews were very accessible, so I didn't really have much problems to get onto the UN system. And they were, before I could join, they had asked me, do you need any reasonable accommodation? So one of the things for persons with disabilities to join a workforce or to participate in even interviews, like Nidodu was saying, you have to circulate your job to organizations or persons with disabilities. Yes, but aside from that, as a person with disability coming for interview, they might need reasonable accommodation. And reasonable accommodation is adjustments that you give to persons with disabilities to enable them participate equally with all other persons on a role or in whatever you are doing. So they were asking me, do we need to make any adjustments for you? When I double checked with Teams, I didn't need anything, so I said no. but then there were reasonable accommodations for my role. So that was taken on another level. So this is how I got onto the UN space. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a follow-up, and to the point, which I think is very important, we make to employers, that our websites should be friendly. We should be able to, there should be screen reading plugins available so that everybody can have access to it. The last bit of my question was, how has it been like working with the UN?
Okay, it's been super anyway. So, for example, like I oversee, as part of my work, the United Nations Disability Inclusion Strategy. So, as part of my work, I assist the UN country team here to implement the United Nations Disability Inclusion Strategy. And like Nidodu said, you have to be intentional. For us, from the leadership to our organizational culture, you have to be disability inclusive. So, for example, the disability inclusion strategy has two parts. It's a system-wide policy on disability inclusion and also an accountability framework. So whether you are a fund or program, or you are a UN country team, you are peace mission, or whoever you are, so far as you are in the UN, it covers you, and you use the accountability framework to report. And I oversee, we have just reported Ghana's, we have just, in December, I submitted the report together with my colleagues on how we are doing. So there are adjustments that I help them to make. So for example, currently, the Federation and site savers are reviewing or assessing, auditing, like they say, the UN country teams, every UN agency, their premises, their office space, in order to ensure that we are the gaps, okay? So we are kind of mapping the accessibility gaps in our premises and our workspaces so that we can remedy those gaps and then make our services inclusive. So from leadership, our strategic planning and management, from programs and organizational culture, we measure all these things to be disability inclusive. So for example, our occupation, do we have policies, HR policies that are disability inclusive? Are we ensuring that persons with disabilities, roles that are advertised, vacancies, reach persons with disabilities? And our HR has done a list that they sent vacancies to, and we have adopted a non-discrimination employment statement as a UN country team that should go out with every employment vacancy announcement to say that nobody is discriminated against. You are required to apply, whether you are a person with disability, and you will have there will be reasonable accommodation for you to kind of make you successful in your role. So yeah, it has been good working for the. We assess everything, even including the reasonable accommodation request. So for example, every reasonable accommodation that is provided for me, at the end of the year, they ask questions. Are you satisfied with the level of the reasonable accommodations that are provided for you? And in addition, this small one, then I finish. Aside from that, there is also, sometimes people forget, but there are staff with dependents with disabilities, and they take their views on board when planning all these things. Staff with dependents with disabilities, and those of us with staff ourselves with disabilities. And there is even a network for staff and dependents with disabilities, so that our views can be taken on board when planning these things and even reviewing the disability inclusion policy strategy. So it's been good working with the UN. There are lots of there are lots of how's it called? There are lots of trainings to kind of upscale you if you are falling short, and all these things. You have other colleagues that you can fall on, and those kind of things. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Alimata. Very rich experience.